The sweetest songs belong to lovers in the gloaming. The sweetest days are the days that used to be. The saddest words I ever heard were words of parting. When you said, sweetheart, remember me.
In the gloaming, the sweetest days were the days that used to be. The saddest words I ever heard were words of parting. When you said, sweetheart, remember me. Remember me when the candlelights are gleaming. Remember me at the close of a long, long day. It'll be so sweet when all alone I'm dreaming, just to know you still remember me.
I guess Buddy got most of his musical talent from the mother's side of the family. My father loved music. He couldn't carry a tune in a bag, but he would insist on us playing. And most of the songs that we sang, of course, were Baptist songs, and all old, golden oldies, we called them. And they still use them at the Baptist church that we go to.
They had a amateur contest, and Mother and Dad always wanted us to take Buddy because he was so cute, you know. And he was, he had a little violin, but he couldn't play it. And just mess us up, we thought. But anyway, we took him out, and he did sing a song, and I think that might have been what caused us to win the contest. The name of it was, Have You Ever Gone Sailing Down the River of Memories? And it's an old song, but he sang it so cute. But whenever we was playing, well, he'd fiddle right along with me, and Travis was playing the accordion. But we had grease on his bow, so you couldn't hear him. And we thought we was playing a good trick on him. He didn't ever know the difference at that time.
Well, initially, as I remember it, Mother and Dad gave him violin lessons, which he didn't care for at all. And later on, they got him a steel guitar. And that was about the age of 11, I believe. And he said, no, I don't want a guitar like that. I want one like Travis has got. So he would borrow mine.
Do you think of me, darling? While we're many miles apart. Oh, please.
So he was a perfectionist, as evidenced by the tooling on his leather guitar case. And other hobbies, I think he liked drafting, architectural drafting, and he worked a while during his high school days at one steel plant out here. Actually, at one time, I think he was going to make that his career, but music took priority over that, so that dropped to the wayside.
I'd say when he was 16 or 17, he got real interested in it, and he didn't dream that he could make his living at it that early, but he would like to. That was by far the overweighing desire of his life for music, and we thought he was good, and after he did get good, we really thought he was good, but we didn't think that there'd ever be a chance that he'd ever make it, you know. Not from here.
Well, my old car's rolling down the line. Thoughts of my baby running through my mind. She's away for me, you gotta be on time. I gotta roll, 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 roll. I gotta roll, 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 roll. Well, the white moss flying on the road below. Man, I'm ready to fly and go. My baby's waiting, I can't go slow. I gotta roll, 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 roll. I gotta roll, 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 roll.
Me and Buddy, he was working for me in the tile business, and we had a big tile job. Had to go to San Angelo to get a truckload of tile, and 18-wheeler, and I let him help me drive it down there. We sort of learned how together on the thing. Anyway, we got to San Angelo and went in this place to get a hamburger. It turned out to be more of a joint than anything else, but we stayed in there, and they had a black combo in there playing. And Buddy got to talking with them, and he knew their language, you know, and hanging around up there. And they said, "Hey, man, why don't you come up here and play us one?" He said, "Well, I don't mind if I do." And, you know, he just dying to. He just had on his Levi's and his jeans. And anyway, as soon as he got that guitar, I would have swore it was a different instrument completely. Just the way you pressed down on it or something, he made a clean sound. It was just a dead little joint when we went in, and it was rocking before we left.
Here am I, oh well, you left me here so I could sit and cry. Well, golly gee, what have you done to me? Oh well, I guess it doesn't matter anymore. Do you remember, baby, last September, how you held me tight each and every night? Well, whoops-a-daisy, how you drove me crazy, but I guess it doesn't matter anymore.
The Christmas before he got killed, he brought her here for Christmas. They brought a bunch of presents. We had a big Christmas. And he was really starting to feel some money then, you know, and we'd always been pretty well behind the eight ball financially. And so they brought us some great gifts and everything. And in fact, is when we went fishing, Buddy would take us in a big place and buy everything that we needed to fish with, you know, all the equipment. And here we'd go, me and him, Daddy and Travis and 2 or 3 other guys, our cousin Sam. We had some good times, I tell you. It just didn't last long enough.
So much admiration for him and so proud of him, you know. And also proud of the small part that we have had in shaping his life and career. And the only tragedy was him leaving this life so young. And but that's something we all have to face.
Where I was on the job working one day and said, "Larry, I need some money. Could you loan me some money?" And he was just, you know, he was eager and patting his hands. And I said, "Well, how much do you need, buddy?" He said, "I need $1,000. I said, "Good grief, why don't you just ask for the moon?" I said, "You know, $1,000 is a lot of money. What kind of guitar are you going to get? You can give one for $50. And yeah, well, I want a good one, he said, and I need to get some clothes. And I think I could make it if I had some clothes and could go to Nashville. I said, okay, but I knew he was coming along pretty good with his music, but I didn't think he'd ever make it, you know, at Nashville or anywhere real big. But I did loan him the money. And he went and spent $600 on that Fender Stratocaster, and then the rest he blowed in on clothes, you know, like a chartreuse jacket. I mean, it was lime green and some blue shoes that was suede and things like that. That I wouldn't have been caught dead in them, but he liked them, you know. When we was going to Clovis to record, I'm looking for someone to love, but he had his guitar in the back and was trying to work up this song. He said, "You know, it needs another verse." I said, "Say, I know something you could put in there." I was just joking, you know. He said, "What's that?" And I said, "Drunk man, streetcars, foot slipped and there you are. How you like that?" He said, "Oh," he said, "I thought you had a deal." But he got thinking about it. He said, "Well, you know, that might fit. It'll meet her out." And he got to put it in there, and first thing you know, he put it in the song.
Drunk man, streetcar, foot slip, there you are. Well, I'm
Buddy was living with Mother and Daddy. He was about 10 whenever I got out of the Marines. And he just thought that I hung the moon, you know, because I'd come back from the service and And I thought a lot of him, and I'd take him hunting and stuff. Got pictures in here of, I have a whole chapter on just Buddy, and me and him together and fishing and hunting. And it was really, before he really was getting into the music, but then whenever he started getting into the music, I was right there to talk to him about it, and he would come to me and have a few little words of a song and say, what do you think I could make a song out of this? I'd say, yeah, I believe you can. He'd sing a little bit like he had. I said, yeah, I believe you can make a good one. And I went to Clovis with him whenever he would cut some songs. He had already been to Nashville. I had the money to send him to Nashville and buy his guitars and his clothes. Mother and Daddy was broke just about, didn't have enough except to eat. And I had some mustering out pay, and I got jobs as a carpenter and different things, all that to tell about. Post office, railroad, riding trains. I worked for all of them. And I tell all about them and some of the good things about them and the bad things.
So you helped Buddy get his start in music with things like that? Is that what you
said? He came to me, well, his first start, he came to me whenever I was home with Mother and Daddy and said, Larry, I need a guitar. And I said, well, Buddy, you can't play one. He said, yeah, I can learn. He said, there's a guy on the school bus, Wayne Maines is his name, and he can play the guitar a little bit, and he showed me a few chords. I said, okay, whatever you say. I said, do you know where we can get a guitar? He said, yep, I do. He said, this guy's got a 45 Gibson we can get for $45. And I said, well, that's reasonable enough. And they're a little guitar, you know. And so we got it. He was sitting around playing it all, or picking around on it. It wasn't making much sense, but he was always working with it. I mean, he was diligent on that thing. He loved it. First thing you know, he was playing pretty good. And playing on the radio with Jack Neal. And then he come to me a little after that and said, well, I'm leaving out a lot of stuff, but he said, Larry, I could go to Nashville if I had a good guitar and some clothes. And I said, well, what will it take? He said, I need $1,000. And I said, man, that's just like asking for the moon. At that time, $1,000 was really some money. But I raked it up for him and sent him to Nashville. He brought some of the gosh awful clothes you ever seen. A chartreuse coat and some red, or I believe it was blue shoes, and you know, rock and roll stuff. I said, man, you blew it now. But they went out there and they didn't hit like they wanted to. They wanted him to do it country-wise, and he said, no, we're going to do it our way or we're not going to do it. And he said, come on, guys, let's leave. They could see that they was in the wrong town and in the wrong place. And he came on back, and me and him was working out here he was my helper in the tile business on the City County Health Unit. It's still out there. I got pictures of it. And, he was real blue one morning. We was working, putting tile up. I said, what's wrong, buddy? He said, oh, Larry, I tell you, if I just had some help and somebody would give me a chance, I think I could make it. I said, well, what about them songs you cut in Clovis the other day, about a month earlier? He said, oh, I don't know. He says, I did the best I could, and Norman's off on vacation, and I don't know who to get in touch with, hardly. He sent them off to New York somewhere, the records. And I said, well, do you know who he sent them to? And he said, yeah, I think his name was Maury Dutch. And I said, "You have a phone number on him?" He said, "I believe I do." I said, "Let's go over to Mother's house, put up the tools, and let's go call him." And he said, buddy, baby. He said, "I'm glad you called." He said, "Norman's out of town, but he said, I want you to know that they're playing your song on the streets of New York, and people are dancing on the streets." And Buddy said, "Sure enough, well, could you send me $500? And he said, "Sure enough, baby, I'll do that." And so he got some money in the next day or two, and I didn't have a helper after that. But I didn't care. I wanted him to make it. And
What song was it? Do you remember that?
that'll be the day.
So had you heard it before it was released? When he recorded it, did you hear it?
No, I hadn't heard it.
But did he play it for you before he recorded it?
No.
No?
I think him and Jerry Allison and Joe B. Got together and they went to that movie, John Wayne, where he would say, "That'll be the day, that'll be the day." And they said, "Let's make a song like that." And they made it just overnight nearly and went up there and cut it. And I was with him when they cut it, the first time I heard it.
You were in the studio
Yeah.
when you played it?
I was in there and they cut that on the back. "I'm looking for someone to love." Fact is, I thought of a verse for him on that one. And I was up there several other songs that he did. I'd go up with him because I was real interested. They'd stay nearly all night cutting music because the phone wouldn't ring, nobody would bother them.
Tell me about that lyric in "I'm Looking for Someone to Love" that you wrote. The story of it.
We was going across the railroad tracks into Clovis, New Mexico. He said, "I need another verse. And I said, "Well, I'd heard my uncle say this when I was working for him as a bricklayer. I helped him as a bricklayer. I said, "Drunk man, streetcar, footstep, and there you are." But he said, "I believe I'll put that in the song." I said, "I was just kidding." He said, "No, I'm going to put it in there." And he did.
Did he record "Old Boy" in Clovis at that time too? Or was that a different time?
Not that time. I didn't hear him record that. "I'm looking for someone to love, and that'll be the day," and "Maybe Baby."
So
He might have did "Old Boy," but he would come to me. I was real busy in the tile business then, and working hard, and he'd come to me and get with me and say, "I want you to hear what I've got," and I'd listen to him and say, "Yeah, that ought to make a good, just get after it, you know." And I kept encouraging him, and he'd say, "Well, I don't have the money to get to Clovis," and I'd say, "Well, okay, we'll give you a draw." He'd been working, you know, but we had a lot of fun together, and I was glad that every penny I ever did loan him, he paid me back. And the fact is, him and the other two, Jerry and Joe B. Joe B, by the way, Joe buys something to eat. That's what Buddy called it. They didn't have wheels that was any count, and they started playing in Artesia and Lampasas and places. And I found a red Cadillac. It's about 2 or 3 years old. It's in pretty good shape. Big old 4-door. And I paid down on it for him and give it to him. And well, they drove the hound out of it for about 6 months or so, maybe longer than that. And one day that man that I got it from, I was on the note, he called me and said, "Mr. Holley, would you come down here and look at this car?" And I said, "Yeah, I guess so. What's wrong with it?" He said, "Well, I wish you'd just look at it." He said, "The boys have trashed it." And it was parked. They at least took it back to him and parked it, and then they left. And I had to pay for it. But it was all, I was glad I did, you know, because they were cooking pretty good and getting better every day.
Did you consider Buddy a rock and roll star? I mean, did you ever think of him like that, or did you just think of him as your brother? I mean, did you see him as a rock and roll star?
Well, he was my brother, first of all. But then I noticed that he was getting mighty good, very good. I just loved it. I never had liked, well, they hadn't been anything like rock and roll before Buddy. Maybe a few guys, but Buddy had picked up from, but I didn't know them. And I liked everything Buddy did, and liked the way he did it. I'd go with him to some of these clubs where he played, and the guys were pretty rough, and some of them said they was going to beat up on Buddy because the girls was going gaga over him, and I'd hang around out there sometimes just to make sure they didn't. But it broke my heart.
Is today a hard day for you? I mean,
Yeah. About 53 years ago today, I didn't think I could stand it. Anyway, the good thing about it, in the meantime, Buddy went off, you know, England and Australia and everywhere, and was making it big, and we sort of lost track of him. Didn't get to see him very often. I tell about when he'd come back, how we'd get together and go fishing and stuff. I'll tell about all that in this book. I tell you, if anybody wants to know about Buddy or about Lubbock in early days, that book. And I haven't found anybody that didn't like it. Sometimes the man and wife will almost fight over it whenever they've got just one book. So I'm real proud of I did it.
The sweetest songs belong to lovers in the gloaming. The sweetest days are the days that used to be. The saddest